by Rabbi Barbachana. One time we were out at sea on a boat. We saw a big fish. We saw a fish. We were aware that it was a fish at the time that we saw it. Seemingly. That's the simple meaning of the words. We saw a big fish. The Yasiv Lechalsag, and what was on this big fish? There was sand on its back, and there was plants on its back. It was like a fish sticking out of the water. It's got some schmutz on it. This is the stuff that's in the water, right? And therefore, Savrinin Yavashtahu, so he thought it was dry? Because it had some dirt on the fish, so we thought it was dry? The Salkinin, and not only they thought that, the Salkinin, the Finin, the Vishlinin Agave, we went up there, we went on this fish, and it says in the commentary of Rabbeinu Shmuel that Hayami, when it says they thought it was dry, it means they thought it was like an island. Oh, well, I thought it was a fish before. Now that I notice it's dirty, it must be an island. It's a strange story. So we went up there and we started making lunch. We started cooking food. We made a fire. And then we realized it really is a fish. It felt the hot fire in its back and it flipped over. What are you guys doing up there? And if it wasn't that our boat was right nearby, we would have drowned. This is the story that Rabbi Nachman is coming to explain. And besides for the fantastical nature of it, that's not so hard to just take it at face value, right? Okay, so you saw a flying fish. In this case, it's not a flying fish. That's a different story. It's just a big fish. This story is not even so fantastical, really. There are fish that are large enough that they could be the land mass that humans could go up there and make lunch. What stands out to me as the question is, really? You're telling me that they saw this big fish in the sea and then they somehow got it in their heads that this was an island because there's sand on there? So, there's a klal in Likutei Moharan. The first 16 or 17, I think it's 16, Likutei Moharans are based on the stories of Rabbi Barbachana. And Rabbi Barbachana famously came to Rabbi Nachman in a dream. Keep in mind, these two men lived 1,500 to 1,700 years apart from each other, so it was a long time later he came to him in a dream, and Rabbi Barbachana, he didn't look too pleased, and he said to Rabbi Nachman, all this time has passed and nobody's explained my stories, and so I need you to do it. So I'll come and I'll help you, and I'll tell you the stories firsthand, not just that in the Gemara it's very kitzer, it's written in a very brief way. Now, one question you might have on that story is, well, isn't there an explanation of the Marsha? Marsha was one of the famous commentators of the Gemara that would comment especially on the stories, the strange stories in the Gemara. We don't see him so much show up in legal writings, even though he did have laws that he's mostly famous for his writings on the stories. He was heavily involved with the production of the Ein Yaakov book, which is the stories from the Gemara with additional commentaries. And the Marsha is like one of the stars of that book there. So the Marsha explains the story. So what do you mean it hasn't been explained? So how does he explain this strange question? Why did they think it was a fish? So he says, it was a fish. Why did they think it was an island? So he says, well, the fish is the mazel of the month of Adar. It's the constellation that corresponds with the month of Adar. The stars were shaped in some sort of fish shape during that time. So what's going on in the month of Adar? Well, it's a turning point. The month before it was rainy, and going forward it's going to be sunny. And he likens this to Galus and Geula. So they saw this island and they thought it was going to be Geula. Also because Nisan is right after. It's one of the laws of Adar that Purim has to be connected with Pesach, has to be connected with Nisan. That's what we do when there's two Adars, which maybe we'll get to discussing that today. And you do Purim in the second one specifically, so it's close to Nisan, which is when Geula. That's Yetzias Mitzrayim, so that's Geula. So they were so excited about it being Adar, and they thought, oh, well, it must be going into Geula Shlema here. because this fish is the mazel v'dar, so that's why they made this mistake. By the way, the fact that it says in the Gemara that they saw dirt on the back of it and therefore they thought it was dry, if they thought it was an island, why doesn't the Talmud say that? It says that it was dry. So the Marshal's explanation is that because they were going into the sunny season, which would represent Geula, and also that's what dry really means. Okay, so the story just got a lot stranger. Let's take him at face value. Let's say this touchdown story way. So you're telling me they saw a fish, and it was a dirty fish, and therefore we think it's an island. That's strange enough. But now his explanation is, we saw a fish, and we thought it was a metaphorical fish. So we made the major life decision to park our boat on this fish, and get out in the middle of the sea, and get out on top of this fish and start making a fire, because we thought it was a metaphorical fish. How does this happen? How does this thinking ever happen? Does someone see something real and they think that it's imaginary, or it's merely symbolic, perhaps, or the other way you could say that someone has something imaginary and they think that it's real? This confusion in general of imagination and reality, both of which are very useful, because imagination, Rabbi Nachman says, if we're sad, we can borrow happiness from the future. We think about things that have not occurred, but would make us greatly happy if they did occur. And it makes us have a happy feeling, and that's good for us. It's good, it can be healthy and productive simply to have a happy feeling alone, right? Even if it isn't grounded in reality. So imagination is very useful. Rabbi Nachman says if we want to pray in an excited, energetic way, as we've discussed the importance of that in this Torah early on, we can imagine that we're doing so, and that will help us to actually do so. So imagination is tremendously useful. So is reality. I don't think anybody had a question about that. Problem is when you mix the two of them up. How does that happen? So now we can perhaps understand why Rabbi Bar Chana came to Rabbi Nachman in a dream and said, nobody's explaining my stories. Okay, so we have an excellent explanation. The Marshal is one of the greatest of all time in explaining these stories. And his explanation is very thorough, and every detail of his story is explained its significance. And so you could say, okay, I understand how the story goes now, call it a day. Except that it leaves us this breathtaking question: how do people get into this mixing up reality and imagination? So the rest of this Likutei Moharan, one way to read it is to say that we're going to take the concepts we've discussed and you're going to re-explain this story as intermingled with those concepts in a way that it should answer that question and any other groundbreaking questions that you'll have as a result of this story. One other thing to say about this question, though, is that I'm bolstering up my question, though, as though is this fantastic question: how do people mix up reality and imagination? Although, if we think about day-to-day life, it's not so strange of a question, really. People get upset about things all the time that are not. They didn't even get the story right. They get excited about things all the time. They didn't even get the story right. They have some version out in their head. This could be interpersonal things. It could be, man, that guy's such a jerk. He must, have a bad personality, and then they're upset about that. Actually, we don't know the story at all. We don't know 99.99% of what's going on in that guy's day, and even our own day, really, that caused that effect. And anybody can really deny that, right? We just have sort of a working model of reality, but nobody's to say that it's really so right. Another really good example would be the news. Anybody that follows the news and has any sort of emotional reaction to it, if they didn't go to journalism school, they're not even qualified to assemble the meta research that would be required to get any sort of real shot on what's really happening. So in other words, most of it is imagination. Most of the story of what's going on in the world that they have a certain emotion about is imagination. So it's not that strange of a question. How do people mix up imagination and reality? If it was entirely imagined in their head, then they wouldn't get excited about it so much. A television show is entertainment. But they do. People do have real feelings about what they think is going on in the real world. They know that their understanding is incomprehensive. And I think they probably have some idea of the extent to which it is so, but there's this thing that happens that people mix up reality with imagination, but it's not so strange. Okay, so then you could say, well, that doesn't really make the story any better with the boat and the fish and the metaphorical fish. Because maybe I watch the news and I get some idea about it, and I know it's not so correct, my idea, but I have a strong emotion about it anyway. But I don't make major life decisions based on that stuff. Like, okay, I go with a certain feeling and then I buy the same house I would have bought if I had a better, more productive emotion. Right? It doesn't change where I choose to live. It doesn't choose what job I choose to get, who I choose to marry, things like that. Really, just how kind of an emotion I feel. So, if I was on a boat and I was like, I have to find an actually safe place. I'm not getting off this boat in the middle of the ocean if I don't find a really, really safe place. I'd make good and sure that was actually an island and not a fish. Especially before I start cooking my lunch on there, making a fire on there. It doesn't really seem to answer the question. So it's a more profound question. How do people come to use imagination, have some sort of imagined version of reality, and then make major life decisions based upon that? But it's not really so strange of a question. What happens? So the Zohar explains that we got two brains. We have the brain in our head and we have the brain in our gut. And they have names. The brain in our head is called the Yetzer Tov, and the brain in our gut is the Yetzer Hara. So following the gut advice? No, leading the gut. That's what we try to do in the Yiddishkeit here, not following the gut. Chas v'shalom. So, but the gut brain is, why is it called a brain? Because it's capable of producing thoughts. And so what will happen is that a person will have an emotion, which is a guttural experience, or they'll have some sort of leaning, a bias about something. It could even be just a desire for any material thing, any person, they have a desire for something like that. And then they will start to build mental constructs upon this, essentially non-information, essentially emotional thing that is not, we have no way of determining if this is good or bad information that we're getting these thoughts from. So it's not really so strange. There are probably actually still people in the world that base their life decisions on astrology. That probably still exists. And all sorts of equally efficacious, equally preposterous things. By the way, the Ramban says that astrology is a legitimate thing. The issue is to get any sort of legitimate information from it, you would have to know exactly what second you were born to get your chart, and exactly what millimeter of space you were in. Because if you were a couple seconds off, you could totally change your whole chart around. If you actually are taking a full picture of the stars, at least according to what they could tell, and a lot of these guys had telescopes and stuff, and they could make real fancy calendars out many years in advance. The Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad, when he was a little kid, he made a 500-year calendar. He didn't have the internet. He had a telescope and some old books. Maybe he had a telescope. Definitely had some old books. So these guys knew what was going on in outer space. They could make predictive calls based on what was going on in outer space. And so this is the Rambam thing. So it's not so strange of a situation, but so I guess it's not that strange of a question, but it is a very poignant question, because now it's a thing we can all look at our lives and see how we do. And so you can understand why Rabbi Baruch Hanan wanted Rabbi Nachman to explain these stories more. The laws in the Talmud are very extensively discussed. The stories not as much. So it's not that there's Chas v'shalom is anything wrong with the Marshal's explanation. It was exactly the step that needed to happen at that time to uncover the story for us more. It's just that he's like the only guy that did it at his time. There's not loads of explanations and loads of discussion between the rabbis where we can kind of sort of climb the ladder to heaven in the studious way and find really the truth of the truth of the truth of the truth here, right? We have truth, but we need more truth of truth of truth of truth. So Rabbi Nachman comes to explain. Now, even though the explanation of the Marshal is not brought in this Likutei Moharan, he does not explicitly reference it, and interestingly, it does not seem to be brought in this. I have a fancy Likutei Moharan that has many sources brought to it, and it doesn't seem to be brought in there. And I do have a teretz that I don't think we're going to get to today, but we will get to hopefully in the next couple of sessions on why that might be, that they did not mention explicitly the commentary of the Marshal. Although one of the rules of Likutei Moharan is that Rabbi Nachman accounts for all available information. It's like the efficient market hypothesis. The cost of the water bottle is correct. If you think it's high, you think it's low, there's information you're not accounting for in the marketplace, right? If you really knew everything in the marketplace, it would converge all in one place that the price of the water bottle is 7 shekels, and that's the correct price of the water bottle according to all the information, right? So the Likutei Moharan Lahavdil. We can say that he accounts for all of the information, at the very least, that has been said up until his time, and there are many of those who say, and you can find support for them saying that in allusions in the text, even commentaries that had not at that time been written. So there are a few hints to this explanation of the Maharsha in the text of Likutei Moharan surrounding where Rabbi Nachman brings the story. And I'm going to point those out, and perhaps also we will, in the process of doing so, glean some additional information to sort of round out how we're going to go forward. What's the question? What are we trying to answer? What do we reckon with going forward? So one of the things worthy of mention, that the fish is the mazel of Adar. This is what the Marshal brings. And of course, it's well known that I mentioned it even earlier. Adar there can be 1 or 2 Adar. And so why does the Marshal say that Adar is going into a time of Geula? It isn't only because of the sunny season, it's because of Nisan. Nisan specifically. And so it's in the Mishnah. If you have 1 Adar and then they add another Adar while you're still in the first Adar, then you read the Megillah again. It's a conversation. What's the ruling of that? It's a conversation in the Gemara how that goes exactly. But that could happen. It could be Adar. I mean, these days it can't, but because these days we have a calendar that's based on math. But in the olden times and the should be soon again times of the Beis Hamikdash, when we had a functioning Sanhedrin, even a little bit after the Beis Hamikdash, they would base it not off of mathematical calculation, but off of the testimony of witnesses who would report when they saw the moon. And for the heavens, this is more valuable than the calculation. We see many things like this in the Torah. There's a conversation in checking a Sefer Torah if you can use a computer to do it, because wouldn't that do a better job than a human? And yeah, seemingly it sure would. So practically what we were told is that they do actually run it through a computer, because then the human sofer knows to check all the spots that the computer mentioned. They might be fine, they might not be fine. We do not take the pesachim of the computer, however, and the reason for that is that they wanted to really make sure the computer was right when they were considering this, can we take the pesachim of the computer question. And eventually they looked and they found that it added a little pixel that connected 2 letters, and it was possible to say for Torah, because if 2 letters are touching, then that would be a problem. But if the sofer actually looked at it just with his eye, with a magnifying glass, which is still considered like the naked eye basically, because glasses are like a magnifying glass, I think is the reason. It turned out it was actually fine. It was not actually. It was basically the computer had an optical illusion. There was a conversation about bugs in the water in New York City, and it's a long conversation, but one of the major details was, because if there's bugs, Jews can't eat bugs, right? So we'd have to do something about water filtration, which is complex on Shabbos. Anyway, one of the major details was the size of the bugs. From an esrog, if there is a piece missing in an esrog, then it's a problem. But if you cannot see the missing chunk with a magnifying glass and no more, it's fine. Even if you have a microscope and you see a missing piece, no problem. Only a magnifying glass. Human testimony is more important to the heavens, to Hashem, than a mathematical calculation. There's even in the Gemara there it brings that some of our neighboring countries are actually better at math Then we were just straightforward, better at math, better telescopes. They were better at modeling the motion of the stars and things like that, and predicting positions of things. And they'd argue with us sometimes. Listen, the moon is coming at a different time than you think it's going to come. And we have a pretty good track record here. We can re-explain all your stuff, so I think you're going to be wrong. We'll see in a couple of days, but I think you're going to be wrong. And then the testimony from the witnesses would come, and it turns out the Beis Din of the Jews was right, even though the math wasn't as good. The Kedushas Levi explains that, well, that's because Hashem changed it to go with the Beis Din, because the human calculation was more valuable. There can be two Adars, and it used to be that we would add this by decision of the Beis Din. Nowadays it's based on math, so we don't have the surprise second Adar thing. I don't think it could happen in these days until we have a Sanhedrin that can accept this sort of testimony. Then they will also have the power to add. You could basically say that the mistake that happened according to the explanation of the Maharsha, they said that it's Adar, so Nisan's coming, so that means this must be Geula, and what we actually see is our eyes deceiving us, and so our imagined perception that it's Geula times is going to replace, but there were actually two Adars that year. And that's all it was. So that is called Shnase Ibor. When the Beis Din adds a month of Adar, they impregnate, so to speak. They add an extra month inside of the year. And so Ibor also, Rabbi Nachman discusses this on the previous page, when we were discussing the concept of that we go up to the city of Mishpat with our prayers, and then we issue rulings in Halacha in that place, that we by doing so we can bring the souls that we're praying for with us to a special place called Ibor, where they will receive rejuvenation. They will receive, essentially what that means in our Torah is new sets of emotions sent to them from sort of the emotional broadcast zone of the universe that will be more helpful for them in their life. And then this is a way of at least bringing about a better world if everybody had more helpful emotions. So something was not being accounted for here, this thing of Ibor. One of the concepts that we've discussed is that when we reach this high place in heaven called Mishpat with our prayers, it's not enough that we do that, but we have to learn Halacha in depth. Because when we're there, we're going to have to issue rulings in order to bring people to this place called Ibor. Because if they had accounted for the fact that it was the second Adar, then maybe they wouldn't have gotten on that. They wouldn't have almost got drowned at sea there. Another thing you could say is, if it was actually the second Adar, then they would have been right, and it would have been Geula Shlema. So at the very least, not drowning is contingent upon this piece of information. How many Adars are there? And it could possibly be the salvation of the entire world and bring into a golden age. So it's an important matter, one way or another. And there is a Chazal, and I don't know where it is, unfortunately, that says that the Iker Halacha, I know that it's brought in Shir and Rabbah, but I don't think it's the original location. I think it's Barais or something that says it's older. It says the Iker Halacha, the main laws are, one of the laws of small bird sacrifices, which are very complex, and also the laws of adding a month of Adar to the year. That the Shnasi Ibor, being Magar the Shana, is a central pillar of Halacha. So it's very clearly an allusion to the learning of Halacha, as well as that this issue of the Adar mix-up, which Adar was it, is not only we have to arrive, but we have to paskin there. This is the second Adar, is that we have to paskin to get there. I was asked a question recently, and there's a bacher, I won't share any names, I hope he doesn't mind them sharing the story, but I'm allowed to do it because I'm not sharing any names. He had a background in in meditative practices from various peoples and the wise of various locations. And one of the things that they do is that they reach a certain state and that they hold in that state for a long time. They're very I've even seen videos where these guys will sit there with a brain scanner and they can make it do like tricks. They can be like, I'm going to go into this mindset, and it does like holds there for a long time. They go do another one, right? They go back and forth. Right? They have very good control of going to these places. So we were just talking about, well, in prayer, yes, you can reach these places. There are very kosher meditations too. We're also going to reach these places. So he asked me, so what does learning Talmud have to do with that? I like that. That seems like a real connection with God for me. I feel I'm connected with God when I go to these places. He does kosher stuff now. He sees in a sefer, he says there's ahavas v'tainugim, and he reads about what the author of the sefer says, that emotion, and he meditates on that. It's like, this is it. Okay. So how does that connect with learning Talmud? Okay, so you don't just feel someplace. You're actually going to a place. When you go to any state of a specific emotional state, you're going to a location in the spiritual worlds. When the Baal Shem Tov says, where your thoughts are, that's where you are, he's talking about like Jewish astral travel here, that you're actually going to a place. Don't think it's only imaginary that you're feeling this way. So what you do there matters now that you're in this place. And according to this Torah, it matters in a tremendous way, because let's say I go to a place of just like, use something general, ahava. I go to a place of love. I do a love meditation. Now, if I just sit there, what am I training the world to do? To be inactive in a state of love. I am broadcasting that love is twiddling your thumbs. If I learn the laws of what happens if two people's cows get in a fight, while I am in this state of love, if I spend my time in the details, now I'm adding love to all such situations. You could also say I'm adding that intelligence of settling disputes in a way that is fair to everyone to love. So that anybody that feels love, this will help them to settle disputes, which is very beneficial in a way that is beneficial and fair to all parties. And also that when people are settling disputes, that they will do so with the emotion of love, and they will be helped by this emotion. So when we go to these places, we are actually doing a tremendously important work. And actually, even with our learning, so then he asked me a great question. Well, so practically what? So I meditate to a certain place, and then I should open a sefer. So I need a 3-hour hakdam before I open any sort of sefer. No, there are times that we learn also. I have Talmud Shir at 11 o'clock. I don't have time to meditate for 2 hours first. I have to go to Talmud Shir. Rabbi Yosef, my teacher, he taught about an avoida of opening the sefer. And before you open the book, just have in mind, what emotion am I going to have going into this? We actually had a list of sort of approved emotions that are going to work really well, and that's those shirim you can find online, where I explain what he said about that. But it's a way of opening the sefer. So when I'm going to learn about the laws of if two people's cows get in a fight, what am I trying to fix in the world by doing that? Am I concerned about how people are with their emotion of love? Are people acting badly out of love? Or they're doing things that are important without love? So then, okay, I should think about love when I open the sefer to learn about cows fighting. Or perhaps I should be very detail-oriented. Maybe that's the emotion I'll go in with. And we say when people are detail-oriented, they're not doing it in a way that is settling disputes. Or when people are settling disputes in the world, they're not detail-oriented about it enough. So then the Torah approach is, okay, so I'm going to learn the laws of settling disputes, and I'm going to, my avoid of opening sefer will be, I will go to the land of detail orientation in this. Or it could be as I'm going to be in awe, as though the king is explaining it to me. And then you mix those two things. And we don't have to make a whole calculation. As we said before, we don't know everything that's happening in the world. We can't know. But we can deliberately choose a feeling we're going to go into the sefer with. And then the important part here that I think is being brought out by this allusion to the Marshal's explanation, that they made the mistake about it was Adar, And no, it's not just a symbolic fish; it's actually a real fish. But if they were right that it was a symbolic fish and it was going to Nisan, it would have been Geula. They should have known that law of the how to add whether there were 2 Adars that month, and that seemingly would have fixed the issue, which is called Shnasa Ibor. And Rabbi Nachman mentions Ibor, which is achieved by going to the elevated state and learning poiskim there. Okay. Oh, the button.
Beautiful. Never heard about the approved emotions. That sounds very interesting. Approved emotions.
I have a kind of a long beer on that actually. I'll try to find it. It's on it's on my YouTube channel. It's based on the book that I transcribed. One of the books I transcribed of Rabbi Yol's when he taught me this book. He goes named Ashrei, I think it's 12. And then we talked about
Okay. Get it, What? A little bit, we pass in the hall sometimes. in the
You cut the costa sometimes, no?
Sometimes. Yeah, sometimes.
Okay.
I like it there, but I'm not usually over there.
Yeah, you're in Marco, right?
Yeah.
In the
Wait,
Nets.
tomorrow.
Nets?
No, I'm here at Trust. He's
Trust.
7.
Okay.
I'm not yet at next guy.
Right. Okay.
So you can go. You have 30 minutes. You want? Oh,
You know, last week I told them not to put it on. I'm redoing it.
What?
The last week what I talked about,
okay.
the Erev Rav,
Oh, I see.
because there were some things that I don't think people should know, they're not ready for it.
Okay.
I'm gonna
How's
do.
the temperature?
Huh?
Warm, cold?
It's a little cold.
A little cold.
כן, אני יודע. אני מכיר אותו, מכיר את התמונות שלו, הייתי אצלו ב...
Okay.
אוקיי, one second.
So you need to just turn the camera on.
What do I do?
Push the red button somewhere.
This right button here?
Yeah.
Push the
Or I
button.
can do it.
Okay.
Either red button, not this one.
Oh, not this one?
There's one up there,
Oh, okay.
or this is the same. So I usually do it here.
Okay.
Tell me when.
One second, let me just start.
Yep.
Shalom Aleichem. Last week and 2 weeks ago, I think we talked about the Torah codes, and we showed the Trump there. We showed the AIDS, lo alenu, lo alechem, all kinds of. You see what the wonders of the Torah. Today we're going to talk about a subject that not too many people know about it, and it's a part of our life. So I thought it was very, very important to talk about it. We're going to be talking about the Erev Rav, the Erev Rav. Who are the Erev Rav and what are they? The Zohar says that we are in a galut of Edom, galut of Ishmael, galut of the Da'at, and galut of the Erev Rav. All these 4 galuyot, we're encountering them now. People know about the Edom, about Ishmael, Esav, Ishmael, yeah. What's galut Da'at? The Da'at, as I explained in further other lectures, is right here, between the Moach of Chokhmah, between the wisdom, and Binah. Chokhmah here, Binah here. Da'at is right in the middle of the head. What is the function of Da'at? A person can know a lot of information, can be very, very wise, very smart, with a lot of talents. But if he doesn't have Da'at to tell him what is good and what is bad, with all his smartness, he can be somebody like Hitler. So what's all his wisdom for? To do bad. And the only person that would have the right da'at to know what is good and what is bad is a Talmid Chacham or a Jew who learns Torah. The Torah will tell us what is good and what is bad. A lot of things that we think that are good for us turn to be not so good for us. A lot of things that we thought they were bad turn at the end to be good for us. Who knows what is good and what is bad? Only the Creator knows. And He tells us through the Torah. So we have the wisdom, we have the binah, but we have to know where to put all this wisdom, in good or in bad. Chas v'shalom. This galut that we're in now, the time that we're in now, people are very, very mixed up. They don't know what is right, what is wrong. And it's not their fault, because they don't have the guidance of the manual. The manual is the Torah. Only the Torah, the Creator, who brought us this manual, can tell us what is good and what is bad. Otherwise, you see that good and bad changes every day. There's morals that change every second. 50 years ago, a woman would, in Canada, I used to live in Canada, 50 years ago, a woman, if she would have her skirt over her knee, they will take her away to the police station. She shouldn't have that was the decent the way to dress at that time. Today, I think they'll take her to prison. She has a dress. Never mind, the other way. Okay. So you see that every second the morals change, and the morals are who is deciding what is good, what is bad? The TV, media, and everything is going down and down and down. Morals are going down and down because there's not absolute truth to tell us what is good and what is bad, because only He will tell us what is good and what is bad. So the galut, the exile of the da'at, is another very, very important factor for this galut. And then there's the Erev Rav. That's the fourth one. Who are the Erev Rav? So I'm going to read you from the Zohar, Bereshit, Daf Chaf Hei, Zohar, Bereshit. It's talking about the Erev Rav. I'm just going to explain. When we were in Egypt, and there were the 10 plagues, and the Kadosh Baruch Hu saved us from all these plagues, took us out of Egypt, there were people that were very, very, what you call today, intellectual. There were people who were like scientists at that time, but they were much higher than scientists of today. What do I mean? Scientists higher, I mean in their power, not in their goodness. Scientists today think that they can copy things. They have missiles, they have to kill people, or they go to the moon and come back, and they know what's in Mars. You'll be surprised to know that these were small things for the Egyptians to know at that time, at the time of Paro. They used to have witchcraft. They used to know names of the other side. And Paro was one of the biggest people on the evil side that ever were created. He was so big in his power on the evil side that Moshe Rabbeinu Kadosh Baruch Hu had to bring Moshe Rabbeinu against him, because they were both in a very, very high place. Paro was in the Tum'ah on the evil side, Moshe Rabbeinu on the holy side. But they were very, very high, both of them, on each side. When Paro failed, and he saw that all his witchcraft and everything that he didn't help, and he discovered that there is a power that's above all powers that are in the world. Ishtabach Shemo La'ad, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Egypt, who was so powerful, just fell apart. just like Syria today. Boom, tack, nothing. All these scientists, so-called, witch wizards, and all these people that are very powerful on the evil side, so that there's a power that's much greater than what they know. So they had an interest to live with the Jewish people to the desert. Why? Because from their interest was, there's a power that's bigger than what I know. I have to go with that power. How many people were there? It's a big discussion. Some say there were millions. Some say there were 300,000. And it's a big discussion how many people left with the Jewish people to the desert. What happened was, these people wanted to convert, but their conversion was not for the right reasons. They didn't convert because they saw HaKadosh Baruch Hu and they said, I have to be with the truth, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the truth. Whatever he tells me I'm going to do. They converted because they said, we're going to gain a lot of things, materially, whatever, to be with the Jewish people. It's worth it. They have the power, so we'll go with them. And what happened in the desert, most of the sins that Israel had in the desert were because of the Erev Rav. So these are people that look like Jews because they converted, but because their conversion was empty, because they had an interest in their conversion, their real souls inside is souls of goyim. So it's a goy with a levush, with a clothing kilo of a Jew. He can have a beard, he can have a kippah even, but inside is a goy. How did they originate? They originated from the time of Yosef HaTzadik. That was in Egypt. If you see in the parasha of Yosef, whoever wanted to have bread and food and came to him, Yosef told him he has to circumcise himself. Why? Why would Yosef say to tell Goyim to circumcise themselves? Yosef saw that they have nitzotzot of Jews inside their souls. So he started them in going to mitzvot. So the first thing he did, circumcise them. Their kids, these kids that came out from these people that were circumcised, they were the Erev Rav. They are the Erev Rav. And that's where the story begins. And we go to the desert with them. After the desert, that generation died, and they again reincarnated to the next generation. And the next generation, until they come to our generation, the Erev Rav. I'll read to you from the Zohar what it says about them. And I think we'll be very surprised about what we're going to read here. It says there's 5 categories of Erev Rav. Their names are Nephilim, Giborim, Anakim, Rephaim, Amalekim. It says here, who are the Erev Rav? It says at the end of times, before Mashiach comes, they're going to be the leaders of the people of Israel. I'm not saying, no, I just want one comment before I say anything, please. Please, 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 I beg you. We don't know who is Erev Rav. Yeah? That's one thing before I say something. We don't know who they are. And it's hidden from us completely. Why? Because you see, in our generation, there's people that are against Torah, against religion, whatever it is. And once they do tshuva, once they start reading the Torah, they do tshuva, they become tzaddikim completely. So this generation is really doing everything, even complaining about the Torah, complaining about Talmidei Chachamim, from lack of knowledge. They just don't know. They never learned Torah. And once they read Torah, and they come and they become tzaddikim with tshuva and everything. We saw people that were like completely, you would think they were Erev Rav. You see them, they become Talmidei Chachamim Tzadikim, and they're great, amazing people. So what I'm saying, I'm just saying what the Zohar here is saying, leaders. So don't come and quote, oh, this is the government, this is that. Please, don't put any labels on anybody. I'm just reading you what the Zohar says, and we don't know who they are. Bezrat Hashem, maybe there are only 2-3 people in this world, or one even. Don't take it for granted that if you see this one doing that, it means that there's a Rav. It's not. Okay. He says that they are the leaders of the people, and their government is in very, 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 very strong government. Now, when it says here that they are the leaders, there's a lot of leaders that are not in the government. Yeah? These are people that are running the people, the Jewish people, without even the Jewish people knowing that they are running them. That's also could be very well. Okay, it says, and they're governing the Jewish people, and they're taking their money. So it could be companies, it could be presidents, it could be all kinds of people, but don't label them, please. And they are reincarnations of people that were in Dor HaMabul, in the generation of Noah. And that's why Noah didn't want to pray for them, because they were Erev Rav in the Dor HaMabul. I didn't want the Erev Rav to come out, to come with him in the Teva. Then there is the next category. They're into wrong desires. Gilui Arayot. These Nephilim, they're called. They're interested in one thing, Gilui Arayot. Everything that has to do with that side, they're into that. And what they do, they try to ruin tzniut in Israel. They bring the fashions, they show commercials, everything without any modesty, without tzniut, everything. To ruin the tzniut of the Jews. So that's the next one of them. Then there's the third one, they're called Giborim. They put their influence in the holy places. Could be in synagogues, Batei Midrashim, all kinds of places that are spiritual. And they control congregations for their honor. Again, please don't label anybody. That could happen, what he's saying over here. The next thing, and through the spiritual channels, they can make a lot of money for themselves, because you can control people either physically or control them spiritually. Spiritually is much, much worse than physically. That's what they do. Rephaim are the category that only care what the Goyim say, what the Goyim think about us. Why? Because inside there is a Goy. So they are more connected to the Goyish world than to the Jewish world. So you see them all the time taking into consideration everything that the Goyim are doing. And they don't care about the sufferings of the Jews. So you see, there's so much influence, Goyish influence, in our country, So you have to know that there's people like that too. The fifth one, Anakim, they put down Talmidei Chachamim, לא עלינו. They put down anything that's from the Torah. And putting down is very, very easy. If a person makes fun, chas v'shalom, of anything, that's the biggest put down that you can get. The Torah says, the Gemara says, ליצנות, כן? דוחה 1,000 תוכחות. What does it mean? one joke, which is making to put down somebody, can put down 1,000 tochachot, 1,000 rebukes. A person now comes, big rabbi or some chas v'shalom, talking Torah, teaching people, explaining them. One person making a joke of what he said, an hour of spiritual arousal can be destroyed by one joke. And that's what they do. They want to put down anything that has anything to do with Torah. So they can wink when somebody says something that's spiritual. They can make a face, all these things. And that, chas v'shalom, can bring a lot of the people down. Now, what about the gerim? There is people that are coming from the goyim to us, become gerim, ger tzedek. What about them? The book of reincarnation, Shara Gilgulim, of Amarchu HaKadosh, say that there's no way that a goy can become a Jew unless he was a Jew to begin with. What does it mean? It says in Har Sinai, 600,000 souls were there. There were Jews, all of them accepted the Torah. It says, where if a person sins, a Jew can sin, one of the situations that can happen is that his soul goes to a goy body. He's a goy, but he's got a Jewish soul. I can tell you that you could see it in a lot of places. Many times you see goyim that just want to hear what a Jew has to say. They want to know what the Torah is saying. And you see that they are close, because many times, because inside him, there is a Jew. So he'll always gravitate to his origin. So he'll become Jewish. In one part of his life, he'll become Jewish, and that's the gerim. And one of the things that we do today, that the Zohar says that Mashiach is not coming because the gerim that have to come to Israel we didn't finish all the gerim to come to Israel. Of course, we don't encourage anybody to be Jewish. We don't say, please become Jewish. It's not our way. The Torah is the truth. Whoever wants to come to the truth, and we test him to see if he's really truthful, or if does he want money because she wants to marry a Jewish millionaire, or she has any interest in this, or he wants I don't know, to be with millionaires or money or power or whatever it is. Of course, this is not real conversion. Only the ones that want to come to Hashem and come to Torah because it's the truth, and they understand and they feel and they know that it's the truth, no matter what the costs are to come to this. These are the people that are really coming to the Torah and coming to be Jewish, Bezrat Hashem. Bezrat Hashem, we see a lot of miracles now. This is a year of miracles. Nobody understands what's going on because there's so many big things happening almost every day that are beyond imagination. Beyond imagination. Look, Israel was, October 7th was the worst day, I think, since the Shoah that the Jewish people experienced. Look what happened from that day till today. It's just unbelievable. All the enemies of the Jews fell in a big way, whether it was Hezbollah, whether it was Syrians, whether it's Iran, whether it's Syria. You know, processes like that will take years and years for a country to fall, or for a terrorist to go away, or whatever. It's happening in months, in days. It's unbelievable. And Bezrat Hashem, this good news It's going on and on and on. The Biat HaMashiach, it says that it's a leda, it's a pregnancy and a baby comes. A baby comes 9 months and slowly, there's a lot of pain, and then slowly, Mazal Tov, here he is. Here is Mashiach in front of us. Be'ezrat Hashem, we finished all the labor pains, and the baby will be outside in very, very soon, and we'll all have a zchut to be with him. Hashem yishmor atkam.
Beautiful.
Be'ezrat Hashem.
Wow.
I sweetened it a little bit.
Yeah.
Last week was judgment.
Yeah.
Be'ezrat Hashem.
And also to remind people not to, we can't.
That's why I was afraid that instead of Dani to kaf zchut, it's going to be kaf chova. This is, he's talking about this one.
Yeah.
That's what I was afraid of.
I remember this happening with Katif.
With who?
Gush Katif.
Gush Katif.
Everybody's calling everybody Arab Rob.
Ken.
Big machlokas.
Nachon.
Of course, it was a terrible time.
Ken.
Yeah.
But that's the danger of this lecture. That's why I wanted to sweeten it. Be'ezrat Hashem.
All right.
Okay.
The new Hassidut, making to be cheaper.
The new Streiber.
It's going to be cheaper. So many people are going to join it.
I have my own, see?
You're making me conkuration.
But be careful, if the Hassidut goes up, this thing is going to cost $5,000.
Yeah. Okay.
Salto.
Toto. Yeah, shalom.